Hey Praxis, what's going on? Chris Rodriguez here, and I'm excited to bring you week 2 of our Isms and the Church series, where we look at imperialism, elitism, sexism, and racism from a Christian perspective. You know, if you know me, then you know that there's a few things that have been heavily influential in my life. First thing is, growing up as a Jersey boy, East Coast hip hop was something that really formed me. But the second thing is Marvel comic books. I'm such a fan and such a fanatic. So to start today's teaching off, I kind of want to merge the two. One of my favorite comics is Thor Ragnarok. In this story, Thor's older sister Hela, who's been banished from Asgard, comes back seeking to rule Asgard. Anybody who opposes her gets destroyed. And the Asgardians, though they fight, most of them come to their death. But there's one Asgardian in particular named Scourge. Scourge realizes that he might experience the same fate of his fellow Asgardians. So he decides the only way to save himself is to make a pact with Hela. Hela accepts his service and makes him her executioner. As I think of this, I'm reminded of a line from the rapper Meek Mill, trying to impress them people in power when power is abusing us. For $44 an hour, you coward, they're using you. You see, all too often, elitist ideas are executed by the people who are not the beneficiaries. This week, we're talking about elitism, and we see this idea of the executioners of elitist ideas not being the beneficiaries in post-slavery America, when we have segregation and we have hate crimes against African Americans, lynchings, church bombings, and all of these things. But they aren't done by the wealthy elites. They're done by just your average, everyday people. What is elitism? Elitism is the advocacy or existence of an elite as a dominating element in a system or society. See, the difference between imperialism and imperialism, it's based upon domination and expanding one's power by taking something from somebody else. But in elitism, it's more about protecting one's status and the power that they have and holding other people back who threaten that status and power. The narrative of elitist ideas is usually pushing this idea of fear that you will not survive because somebody is threatening you. Why is this important for us as the church to know? Well, because when the early church was forming, these ideas were prevalent in the church. See, in Acts 6, we see that the church is growing in rapid numbers. And we see that the apostles, the work is so much for them to do that they appoint deacons to serve the community. Right? And this is awesome. This is incredible things that are happening. This multiplication. But one verse that we skip is Acts 6, verse 1. In Acts 6:1, we see that as the church is growing, there begins to be some complaints of discrimination. That the Hebrew-speaking Christians are getting more rations than the Greek-speaking Christians. Christians. This idea was foolish because both Greek and Hebrew Christians were being persecuted by the same Roman Empire. You see, when we have elitist ideas, these ideas aren't from Christ. And so many times when we think about elitism, we associate that with people who have a lot of money, who have a lot of influence, who have a lot of power. But a lot of time, we are the ones, us commoners are the ones who are given this false narrative that we need to preserve ourselves. So what does Jesus have to say about this? In Matthew 25:31, Jesus talks about the king separating the goats from the sheep. The sheep being the ones that listen to his call, that do as he says, that's a part of his kingdom. And the goats being the ones that disobey and are not a part of his kingdom. He says to the sheep, see, you have clothed me when I needed clothes. You fed me when I was hungry. You visited me when I was in prison. And the response to him was, when did we do this to you, king? And he says, well, when you did this for the least of these, you did it for me. You see, when we decide to serve those and elevate those who are broken, who are experiencing grief and loss, who are struggling in society, we are being like Christ. So what is a practical way for us as Christians today to fight these ideas and these fear-based narratives of elitist ideas? The first thing is to advocate for those who are voiceless. Speak up for those who feel like society is not listening to them. We see these fights for injustice around us right now, all the time. The next thing is to dignify people. Right? We don't want to serve people out of pity, but we want to be moved by compassion like Christ. And the last thing is to use our platforms, use our places of influence and opportunity to give other people a seat at the table. One of the things that I've been doing outside of church as I've been working with my clients, coaching them, and they've been asking me, how can we make change? What can I do? The problem just seems so big. Well, I tell them, what are you building? What are the things that you're doing to give people an opportunity? Whether you're interviewing people for your company, whether you're building frameworks within your businesses, right? These are little ways that I'm watching people in corporate settings do this. What are some ways that you can do that where you are? Be encouraged. Love you guys.